Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome to our today's talk on the Meet the Young Professionals webinar series. Today, we are extremely glad to have among us as a speaker, Mr. Azfar Adib. So Mr. Adib is not a stranger to the young professionals. He has been a very active IEEE member when he was in Bangladesh, and he comes and joins our online and virtual activities frequently, even though he moved his country. So let me still introduce him. So he completed his B.Sc engineering from the Department of EEE BUET, and then he completed his MBA from IBA Dhaka University. He's currently pursuing his PhD from the Department of EEE Concordia University. Before that, I think he gave me another slide. I'm sorry, I haven't updated it here. So let me briefly say that he worked firstly in the IICT as a research engineer. And after that, he went to work for Grameenphone, where he studied, he worked until very recently. He worked there at their IoT team. And right now he's doing his PhD in the Department of ECE at Concordia University and Montreal. So without further ado, let me give the floor to Mr. Adib, where he would be giving us a talk on adaptive intelligence, machines and humans.
Okay. So thank you so much, Sajid. Just to check, am I clearly audible and is my screen visible here?
Yes, you are, and screen is also visible.
Okay, perfect. So very warm welcome you to all to our talk today. And again, many thanks to Sajid. And I have to mention that coming to IEEE YP platform and in an event with Sajid really sparks up a lot of nice old memories because almost 10 years back when we just graduated, at that time, Sajid was leading this entity, which was then called IEEE Gold. So it really makes me nostalgic, and it's just amazing to see Sajid coming back and again taking it to a new height. Obviously, IEEE has progressed a lot in these years. So I would really like to thank Sajid and the team for making this great platform. There have been so many awesome talks. So for today's one, I would just like to share my little knowledge on some particular topics. So the topic is adaptive intelligence, machines versus humans. And as I said, I am Adib. So I am now in Concordia University as a PhD student. I also work as a leadership facilitator for the university graduate students. So first, let me share a bit the agenda for today. So we have actually 1 hour, and I have tried to optimize the contents a little bit so that we can have some time for question answers. So I will basically focus on the key aspects, at least to make sure that we do have some takeaway messages. So rather than going through extensive details, we will try to focus on some basic themes so that everyone try to grasp something from the session today. So basically, we are going to talk on three particular aspects. Firstly, about adaptive intelligence. What does that mean? Then I am going to talk more about one example, which is actually my current area of research, which is ECG-based biometrics. So I will try to explain the concept of adaptive intelligence through that particular example. And finally, that can be a really interesting one, but how we can adapt it by ourselves. So both machines and human adoption is important for both. So we will talk a little bit on that. And I personally always encourage interaction. Since it's limited time talk, so I could not include much interactive elements, but I would really appreciate your questions, your comments at any time of the session. And of course, we will have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so let's move on. And Sajid mentioned about myself. So just to recap, so here is my journey in a summary for last 15 years, I guess. So I graduated from BUET in 2009. Then I started my MBA in IBDU. In the meantime, I worked for a short while in ICT BUET in the embedded system project. It was for a very short while, but that was really an enlightening experience. And then I worked for Grameenphone for 8.5 years. So I basically worked in different roles in data core network, in IoT and ICT partnership. And finally, my latest development is I started PhD in Concordia University in Montreal, Canada, in electrical and computer engineering. And I am also doing some detailed jobs here. I work as a graduate teaching assistant, graduate research assistant. Also, I'm working as a leadership workshop facilitator for the university. So maybe you may wonder that why there are two different columns, like some items are in the left, some are on the right. And maybe some of you are being able to understand that on the left is my educational part, and right on the right are my working part. So one part on the left, the blue background ones are my educational activities, one, and the other one is the working activities. Because in life we are actually always doing both, and sometimes, as you can see here, that in my case there have been switch. I mean, of course, after doing the undergrad and graduation, I have been working. Then now I'm again back to academia. So we will talk more about it on the later part of the presentation. Okay, so now our topic for today, adaptive intelligence. What does that mean? Actually, it is not a very new concept to us because we are always adapting our intelligence. So intelligence, that means we are always analyzing things, we are judging things, and accordingly we are taking our decision. So a very simple and of course a dominant example for current time, wearing masks. Just 1 year before, at this time of the year, if we could see people like this wearing masks, was that usual to us? Obviously not. So at that point of time, it was very unusual to us. Now, right after 1 year, now in October 2020, this is very usual to us. And we don't know after 1 year, in October 2021, how we look at this. For example, if there is a COVID vaccine, maybe we can resume our normal life. In that case, we will not need to wear masks. So see, we are adapting our thoughts, right? Something which was unusual to us 1 year before is now very usual to us. And after 1 year, it can again take a new turn. So how we are doing this? This is very simple. You may wonder that why we need to think about it, but let's think deeply how we are changing our views. So, or how we are adapting our intelligence. So if we are adults, so by adults I actually mean people who have understanding or basic consciousness, so that they can actually watch things and grasp things, or they can read, or they have the literacy. So for adults, it is easy. We watch, we know, we are following instructions that we have to wear masks. We know about the COVID pandemic, so it's easier for us to follow. But for kids, or I should rather say babies, who actually may not have the full understanding capability, how? So, is there any questions here? Okay, that's what's Sajid. Okay, so for a baby or for a kid who may not be able to read, or maybe he still cannot talk or understand what others are saying. So how that kid, he or she will interpret this? So for them, it's simple. They check the pattern. Like maybe before, they were not seeing more people wearing masks. Now they are seeing many more people wearing it. So they are thinking it now as usual. And after 1 year, they will again see what is happening and they will take the decision accordingly. So just a simple example, but what does it tell us? That we actually can learn in different ways. Either we take direct instructions, or we actually interpret things directly, or what we call cognitive learning, or we can analyze the pattern, and based on the pattern we can decide. So that's how our human thinking works. Now, what about the machines? So let us consider the same scenario for machines. For example, I am using a facial recognition system. So I guess most of you know facial recognition systems. It means when you are in front of that machine, there is a camera. So the camera captures your face, it analyzes, and it tries to tell who is this person. And in a particular premise, like in a hospital, if there is a facial recognition system, that can be used as an authentication scheme. For example, when someone is entering the hospital, their face is getting analyzed, and accordingly, the system is deciding if it's a staff, a doctor, patient, or somewhere else. So the same dilemma comes here. 1 year before, if a facial recognition system could see a person with a mask, what its algorithm could interpret? It could take it as that, okay, this person is probably a health professional because he or she is wearing a mask. But now, when they are seeing a mask, they cannot make the same judgment. They have to update themselves because now everyone is wearing a mask. And again, after 1 year, they may need to update themselves again. So we saw how humans changed their view or updated their intelligence. What about this machine? This is a dumb machine. It just has some algorithm and it's running accordingly. How it is deciding? In this case also, like the human, there can be two scenarios. One option is manual. We can change the algorithm. We can update the algorithm. It's similar to the way the human adults were learning. So we, the adults, we were seeing the trend, we were judging, we were taking instruction. Similarly, the machine can take our instruction to update itself. That's the manual way. And the automated way is simple, just like those babies. So the babies were seeing the pattern and they were updating their thinking. In this case also, if the algorithm runs automatically and if we put an automatic update option in the algorithm so that it can check the pattern and it can auto-update it. So my purpose of showing this example was just to clarify that the adaptive intelligence, how it works. It actually changes the context. And basically, our core knowledge is not changing. Like here for mask, whatever we knew about mask before, we still know the same. Our knowledge or our perception about mask is not changing, but we are changing based on the pattern, based on the context. So something which was not seen 1 year before, we are now seeing that. So we are changing our thinking accordingly. And same goes for an artificial intelligence machine. It is now checking the pattern and is auto-updating it. And just to share with you, this indeed has been a problem recently in some AI-based facial recognition systems. In different hospitals, in different shopping centers, here in North America, we have the system in many places. So some place centers put this for COVID purpose to detect people. But initially, some systems were struggling with the mask because they did not have any algorithm to capture what's going on. So some of those have to be updated manually, and also some are actually updating by themselves. So now we know that algorithms are running fast. So what we learn is that why and how we need to adapt our intelligence. So I guess maybe now you're going to guess it better. So for the next part, I will focus on one particular example, which is actually my current area of research. So that will take some time. Also, it can be a little bit technical, but I have tried to keep it as simple as possible. So let us start with the background. Protecting our passwords. So maybe I do not need to mention that why we need to protect our passwords, because in this digital age, security, privacy are the biggest concern. And so many times we are seeing hacking or security interference in different arenas. So we all know the necessity. And just to, I put some recent news here, like last week there were news around that the Twitter of US President Donald Trump has been hacked, and somebody claimed that he hacked by just guessing a simple password. So you know that can happen. That it may not be difficult to guess the password of a person, because many of us have the habit to put very basic information, our year of birth or our maybe our name or our some other information as the password, and we know that this can be vulnerable. And also, I am personally a fan of this person in the bottom, Yuval Noah Harari. So he is one of the topmost philosophers at the current time, and he actually writes and speaks a lot about the future of human beings in accordance with technological progress. So Mr. Harari, he uses the term hackable enemies because he believes that we, the humans, are becoming hackable enemies because every part of our life is getting digitalized, and that actually makes us hackable. So the thing is very simple. For example, we are very dependent on our smartphone. So if the phone is hacked, we actually lose control of many of our assets, and many of our information gets exposed. So according to Mr. Harari, the more we are getting digitalized, we are becoming actually hackable enemies. So that's an interesting term that he used. So the bottom line is that security and protection is very important, and how we do achieve that, particularly if we think about passwords. So we are always using passwords in so many areas, for example, in email, in bank account, and everywhere. So how do we make a password secure? We all know that when we set a password, there can be different mechanism. We can use certain number of characters or input special characters. How about a different approach? So how if we use the passwords from our body? That means from our body, we have different biological signals, and we can capture those using different sensors. So this is what we actually call the IMOT, Internet of Medical Things. So here we have a lot of sensors put in different parts of the body, and these sensors captures the body patterns and provide different signals. For example, from our head, we get the EEG, from our heart, we get the ECG, and similar from other parts of the body. And of course, we are familiar with the biometrics or fingerprint. It is very commonly used in Bangladesh and many other countries of the world, which is actually the most common use case of biometrics, fingerprint-based biometrics. There are other options as well, like we can use the iris of the eye. Of course, the facial recognition we were talking a bit later. DNA is emerging as a good medium for biometrics. So these are we call the physiological biometrics: fingerprint, hand, iris, face, DNA, something which is generating from the physical parts of the body. Also, it can be behavioral. For example, keystroke. When I am typing in my keyboard, it follows a particular pattern. So that can be also my identification. My signature, that means my digital signature, of course, and my voice. So now in many banks, when you call, it is available here in Canada that if you call in the bank call center, they analyze your voice, and at that point of time, they are identifying that it's you. So voice-based identification is there. Also, at the same time, we have a very emerging biometrics mechanism, which is our heart signal or ECG, electrocardiogram. So I guess most of us are familiar with ECG. If anyone has any heart issue or for regular medical checkup, we have to conduct ECG, capturing our heart signals. And that is also unique for every human being. So that can be used as a password. So now this may sound as a complex picture, but I will try to make it easy. It's just the very basics that how ECG is generated. So human heart, this is more as an anatomical overview of human heart. It has different parts. And the basic purpose of heart is, of course, I can say the purifying the blood or making the blood being pumped in different parts of the body. So as blood passes through different parts of the heart, in every part we have a signal, we have a biomedical signal. And when we capture it using electrodes, it gets interpreted as electric volt. So thus we get the ECG wave, as you can see here, that PQRST. So each of these waves corresponds a particular phase of the blood movement through the heart vessels, or the heart activity, the heart pumping. And so if there is any abnormality in the heart, the waves changes accordingly. So basically, using this property, ECG has been used for so long for cardiac diagnosis. In fact, this is the dominant tool for cardiac diagnosis. And now, the researchers are trying to use the same as a password. So how does that work? What makes ECG secure as password? The first thing is ECG is unique to every person, and it varies significantly in accordance with certain individual factors. So I have a slide on that. I will talk more on that. So password has to be unique, and ECG is unique for every person mostly. The good thing is ECG is a necessary sign of life, because as long we are alive, our heart is pumping, we have our heartbeat, and until that point ECG exists. If our life stops, then there is no signal from our heart. But think about the passwords. You use a password in your Gmail or whatever. Suppose, okay, I can think about me. Suppose my life ends, but my password obviously does not end there. So still my password remains hackable. But if I use my heart signal as my password, then after my life ends, there is no way for anyone to hack it or use it for other purpose. And of course, it's universal. Every human being has a heart signal. So maybe every person in the world may not have a password or may not need to do so, but at least all of us have our heart signals, because that is the very necessary sign of life. So that also makes ECG special. And also, it is a continuous physiological signal, very difficult to steal or replicate. So we know that it's very easy to hack our passwords. Even nowadays, we are seeing that our biometrics are being stolen. There has been some incident in certain countries that the biometric database got hacked. But if we use our heart signal for biometrics, so that is more difficult to steal or replicate. So this actually makes it secure. So having said all this, how we actually do that? How we do the ECG-based biometrics? So this is a usual flow. The very first step is enrollment. So I can explain in terms of the fingerprint. So what happened when you give your fingerprint? For example, in Bangladesh, all of us gave our fingerprints when we registered for the national ID card. So we went to the election commission office or to our local office then. There we gave our fingerprints. So that's the enrollment part. There is a biometric acquisition device. In case of ECG, it can be the smart wearable. So I will talk more on that on the next slide. So the device acquires the signal. Then there is pre-processing. The signal gets free from noise, and there are other aspects. Then we extract the feature. So the signal is actually, it can have a lot of things, but we need the unique feature to identify the person. Then we put it in the database, and ultimately that thing becomes the ID of the user. So in case of biometric, our fingerprint becomes the ID. In case of ECG, it's the heart signal or that particular pattern of the ECG of that particular person. The next part is verification. So again, we are going somewhere, maybe we are going to test our votes. So to give our votes, we have to do the biometric. Similarly, in the voting center, there is a biometric acquisition device. We put our fingers there. The signal is captured. It gets pre-processed. The noise is removed. There are other steps. The feature is extracted, and then it gets matched. That, okay, this feature matches with which person. If it matches with anyone, then we are authenticated as that person. If it does not match, then we are rejected. So same for ECG, the from our ECG signal, it gets verified against the template, and if it matches, then it's fine. If it does not, then we are rejected. And here, in case of ECG biometrics, actually the revolution is being done by smart wearables, because traditionally, the ECG acquisition setup was 12 lead, which we see in the hospitals or in the medical centers. As you see in the picture on the left, for a particular person, there are 12, around 12, at least 12 leads or more, which are placed in different particular parts of the body to capture the signal. So that is really a cumbersome setup. But with the rise of smart wearables, now we can get the ECG through the simple smartwatch. So already many smartwatches have incorporated ECG in their features, and that is actually making it very easy. And that's what we are seeing, that the heartbeat may soon be the only password. So the optimized process for ECG-based biometrics, which we are now actually working with, is the first part is acquisition. So there has to be a capable smart wearable device which will capture the ECG signal. It can be in sync with your smartphone. Then comes the pre-processing. So for pre-processing, those of us who are a little bit familiar with signal processing, we know that raw signal is always full of noise, so we need to denoise it. We need to have the peak detection. So the R peak actually indicates the one ECG segment. So we need to detect the R peak, and then we need to segment the individual ECG signals. And also just to add that ECG signal period is proportional to the heartbeat. So usual period is 0.67 to 1 second. So one R peak means one heartbeat. So that's how we can relate. So after pre-processing, we do the feature extraction, and that can be of two types. The one can be fiducial, which we call reference point based. So our purpose is to use that ECG signal as a password, and to do so, we can find out particular waveforms. For example, as I was showing you 2 slides before, that ECG signal has certain shapes, PQRST waves, what we call. So we can try to find out those points, and we can then differentiate that whether these points vary from person to person. That's one approach. The other approach, what we call, is non-fiducial. That means we analyze the overall waveform. And by analyzing the overall waveform, we try to find out that what does it represent. So to do so, we have different signal processing techniques like DWT, discrete wavelet transform, DCT, discrete cosine transform, or DFT, discrete Fourier transform. So we do the signal processing on the entire waveform to find out its particular parameters. So both fiducial and non-fiducial methods have been used, but nowadays we see more use of the non-fiducial because it's more independent of the individual points. We are analyzing the entire signal. And finally, we come to the identification part. So for identification, we do the template matching. So it's simple, as you know, we already have the signal. We enroll the user. Now we need to identify the particular person. So matching, we have different mechanisms. For example, KNN means K nearest neighbor. So that's also a mathematical technique to match. ACR, autocorrelation coefficient, we can check the correlation. And of course, the more emerging part is deep learning, that's what we are actually talking about in this talk today. So for deep learning, we have the CNN, convolutional neural network, long-term short-term memory LTSM, or support vector machine SVM. So there are different mechanisms. For the interest of time, I'm not going that through details on the technical part. I'm just giving an overview. So in summary, this is an optimized process for ECG-based biometrics. We have to accord the signal. We are pre-processing it. We are extracting the feature, and finally, we are doing the identification. And there has been extensive research going on this in different parts of the world. There are already some market products, and it's a continuous area of work actually. Okay. Now, coming to the interesting part, that ECG actually varies. Of course, it will vary. That's why we are using it as a password. We expect it to vary from person to person. But what happens if it varies within the same person? That means our password can change within ourselves. So of course, when we put a password somewhere, we are not changing it every time. But if we use ECG as a password, it can change automatically. Why it can change? There are some factors. For example, there is the heart geometry, the size of the heart, cardiac muscle thickness and shape. Because of this, ECG varies from person to person. Individual attributes, that can be the internal changing factor. The signal varies with our age, our weight, certain factors like as pregnancy, dietary and drug uses. Again, physical exercise. So that can be easy to understand for us because when we run, our heartbeat increases. When we are doing any sort of physical activity, our heartbeat changes. So when we are running, walking, swimming, or hiking, our heartbeat is changing. And also our psychological condition. That is interesting. Our emotion actually does impact our physiological condition. Accordingly, it has been proven in research that the ECG waveform updates. So when we are angry, when we are fatigued, or when we have certain emotional scenario, it can impact the ECG signal. And posture, so the signal varies when we are standing, when we are sitting, and when we are lying down. So, and finally, last but not the least, the basic electrode characteristics. So maybe we are wearing an ECG smartwatch, what is type and size as a number. So if we are doing the full face 12-bit ECG, it also matters. So in summary, ECG is varying not only from person to person, but also within the same person. And now we can see the factors. It can vary when we are doing some physical exercise, when we are getting older, or when our weight is changing, when our emotional status is changing, or when our postures are changing. So it can impact the ECG waveform. So what will happen then? Obviously, interperson variation is okay because the interperson variation makes password of different people different. That's what we want, okay? But because of the interperson variation, the password of the same people can be different. For example, there is a snapshot, this one, it is from the University of Toronto ECG database. So for the same person, you can see the change in waveform when he was in rest, when he or she is walking, when he or she was swimming, and when after the exercise. So how do we address that? Because if I recap, we have a very nice optimized process to generate the password from the ECG. We have to do the enrollment. Then if the person comes back, we have to verify if it's the same person. But maybe when the person came to enroll, he was in a resting state, so we recorded his ECG. Now he comes back after 1 day, maybe after a running, and due to running, his waveform is changed, but the person is same. So how do we identify that is the same person? We really have to solve this puzzle, otherwise this system is not working. And actually that is my key research team. So I have been working in some particular aspects of that. For now, I can share the overall logic. So obviously we have some market products on ECG biometrics, and those are already addressing this challenge. So here comes the question of the adaptive intelligence, and over here we can call it adaptive key generation. So the key, it can change, the password can change, it has to be adaptive. And we have used the adaptive intelligence, not only artificial intelligence. So AI is not enough, we have used adaptive intelligence. How do we do that? So obviously we first learn the patterns. So for the person, when he or she is coming at different times, we are observing the patterns. Then we are trying to identify the normal part. So that is actually another long research history. There is different ways to identify the normal part of an ECG. So by normal part, we mean that the part which may remain unchanged in any circumstances. We try to identify that. So once we get the normal part, we try to match with the template. So we get the adaptive feature and the normal feature, unchanged feature, we try to match it with the template. And finally, we update the template. So if we are done with the matching, that may not be the end of the story. We have to update it. So maybe once we recorded the ECG of a person at particular point of time, now we got another ECG for the same person for another scenario, and we have to store it in the template. And the same keeps repeating for the entire life cycle of that person. Whenever he or she is coming back to use the password, we have to keep it updating. So see, the password is actually dynamic, not only dynamic, it is continuously dynamic. It can change at every instance. At the same time, we have to make it sure that we are verifying the right person. So that is very interesting, also challenging, and that is why it has now some nice research focus. And the processes are actually bi-directional, like if I say learning patterns and identifying normal part. So you see the double arrow here, the data is flowing in both way, and same for other parts. So this is the very basic symmetry that how we can use the adaptive intelligence for this particular purpose. And same goes for so many other purposes for AI, and particularly for using AI in medical sector, we have to use adaptive intelligence more than before now. Okay, so now in the next part, I will go to some more generalized version, and I guess if there is any sort of questions so far, or we can take some questions at the end. We are almost the halfway, so I was thinking we should take some questions now, or we can take at the end. Okay, so I guess there is not much questions now. Okay, is there any? Yeah, so thanks, Sadit. Yeah, please feel free to put question in the chat box. Okay, and can carry on for the moment. Maybe I can come back later. So having said all this, there we have to be adaptive for the AI mechanism. But the key thing is we need to have right and adequate data, because without data, these will be just dumb machines. Just like that mask example. So if the machine could not observe that now many people are wearing masks, it can never decide that, okay, I have to update my algorithm. Now I need to consider mask wearing as the normal phenomenon. Same goes for the ECG. If we are not getting enough samples from a particular person, we are never being able to update that data. And I can share some recent examples. So obviously, I mean, I am actually sort of sorry to mention COVID again. This is not a very happy topic to discuss, but obviously now it is occupying many of our research focus. So as COVID pandemic is going on, there has been a lot of research on this, also in Bangladesh or in different countries of the world. And for that, we need data. The researchers need adequate data because disease is new. And without data, we cannot develop anything. So in many cases, the researchers are getting open calls. For example, in the left picture, you're seeing that some researcher in the university, they requested people to share their coughs online. So people just need to phone on a particular number, and they will just record those ECG. I'm sorry, they will record the coughs. So people have to create the coughing sound of themselves. So they will record the coughs, and then they will analyze the pattern to detect if it's a COVID or non-COVID. And on the right one, I am just sharing one position that we made from our lab in the B.Sc lab of Concordia, where I actually work. So we proposed for a COVID detection based on respiratory and coughing pattern analysis. So what we propose is that we will record the cough of a person from microphone, and we will also record the respiratory pattern through our radar. So you know how the radar works. It sends a signal and it comes back after deflection. So by sending a signal to a particular person, and after it gets reflected from their chest, we can understand the respiratory pattern, their breathing rate, and we can try to find out if the person is COVID symptomatic based on the breathing rate and the cough detection. So technically it's going fine, but again, our struggling part has been the data, because the disease is new. We are still not getting enough data from the hospitals, so it will take some time. So the bottom line is, for any AI system to succeed, data is crucial. And when we talk about adaptive intelligence, the data is more crucial, because adaptation cannot happen if there is not sufficient data. In any ways, we need to have sufficient data to do the adaptation. So we have to use sufficient data always, and there is actually no easy answer to this question. Like as I said, for the COVID, we are still struggling to get sufficient data, because for now, hospitals are more focused to give direct treatment. Research collaboration is their secondary priority, because now we have to save people's lives. Maybe as time moves on, after 1-2 years, we can have more mature data set on the COVID. Okay. So since I have been discussing about research on AI arena, and I think many people here can be interested about the higher study scopes, so I can share a little bit about that. In Canada, we have some nice hubs for AI-related research. So I live in Montreal, and here in Montreal, we actually have a very nice consortium of different universities and institutes. And the credit actually goes to Mr. Joshua Benjo. So I think many of you who work in AI or deep learning, you know him. Mr. Joshua, I should say Dr. Joshua is considered the father of deep learning, because the improvements we see nowadays in deep learning most is related to him. So he's a professor in University of Montreal. Also, he runs the MILA, which is the Quebec AI Institute. We also have the Montreal AI Ethics Institute, where actually I contribute a little bit. So we actually discuss about the social and other aspects of AI. For example, we analyze the AI policy papers of different countries. We have a discussion every week, and we share this with corresponding country. And of course, we have the universities, the University of Montreal, McGill University, Concordia where I study, University Laval and Sherbrooke. So there is a nice little atmosphere here to do this kind of research. And of course, in other parts of Canada as well, there are a lot of universities. So I would not like to highlight any particular university here in Montreal or in other set. I am just mentioning few examples, but there are so many places doing a lot of research. And obviously nowadays, AI research is not something special, because as we see the trend in any kind of research, in any arena of electrical or computer engineering or anywhere, machine learning comes up. Without machine learning, nowadays we hardly see any research papers. So this is becoming actually a basic prerequisite. And also there are special research on this. So about other facilities, Uni of Alberta, Uni of Toronto, University of British Columbia, Waterloo, McMaster, Simon Fraser, and there are many more. So these are some of the dominant ones. So if anyone feels interested to try in Canada, of course, there are good scopes and there are good funding opportunities as well. So talking about that, I can share some common question I often receive from maybe from the juniors or from the peers who are interested to pursue higher study or maybe industry experience on AI. So one thing I often face, and interestingly more from the BUET grads, that do we need to have any particular subject? Like, do I need to have undergrad in any particular subject or any particular major to be researching AI? So the answer is not at all, because nowadays it's more multidisciplinary. And interestingly, it consists of both technical and non-technical domain. For example, the research teams we have here on a particular AI purpose. For example, on COVID-based AI solution, here we have people from, obviously from engineering, we have people from doing the codes, doing the programming. We also have people from sociology department, people from market analysis and other parts, because the social impact or the acceptance of here is now a more concern. So now in almost every research team, we have cross-dimensional people from both technical and non-technical arena. So this indicates that not only for technical people, non-technical people, or I should say non-engineering people, they can also contribute. So teams are now more multidisciplinary. Then another common question that me or others often see that about the programming expertise, because in our undergrad or when we are studying in Bangladesh or when we are studying a certain phase of life, we have certain programming skill. When we come to do AI-based part, we need to know, so of course we need to know some things like Python or others. So many people ask often that, how much expertise do I need? So it is definitely essential, but you can develop it gradually. So to develop it, you can check some open data set or contest. For example, since I work with the biomedical signals, here we have a lot of open data set. For example, for ECG, there are at least 18 open data sets available for analysis. So that somehow makes our life easy, because as I was saying, that data set is the critical thing. Without data set, I am actually just dumb and blind. So when I at least I have some secondary data set that helps me to do my work. So for ECG or for skin disease or for EEG, we have a lot of open data sets that make it easy. And also, we have a lot of contests going on in the year. For example, just yesterday, I was seeing the Facebook MIR research, or for every domain, like for ECG, I think Stanford runs the contest. For skin disease, there is another contest run by the MIT Media Lab. So you will just find some open, I wish I could share some here snapshots here, but so I could not do it for now. So you can find some contest and you can just see what they're doing there, what is the requirement, you will find that data there. Then you try to learn gradually. You need not to take part in the contest, but that can give you some idea that how you develop your thinking, because ultimately the thinking is most important. The analytical skill, when you are applying in a grad school, so the professor will also check what softwares you know, how much programming you have done, but they are more interested to see that your real analytical skill, because ultimately you will be developing the algorithm, or you will be updating the algorithm, you will be adaptive in it. So the adaptive part, whether you can analyze it properly, that is more important, and you can learn this programming gradually. And about the industry jobs, many people ask that I do a lot of good programming, I can do nice programming in Python, but I did not have any formal education. I did not have any degrees, engineering degree. So how can I get jobs? So academic background is preferable, because sometimes even you are applying somewhere, they like to see something in your credential, okay? But at the same time, of course, your skill works. The real skill matters. So if you have a real skill, that can help you. Here in Montreal, particularly, we have a broad startup ecosystem. There are a lot of startups coming up every year based on AI, or tech startups, I should say. Same for the rest of Canada, and of course in North America, because I am not mentioning about US or the Silicon Valley. That's in enormous scale. I'm mostly totally focusing on Canadian context. So here in Canada, in Montreal, we have nice ecosystem. So there are job opportunities as well. Now, having said all these, now I can talk a little bit on the other part. So it's about transition from BD, because if I go back to my own background, so as I was mentioning that I worked in BD for several years. I had my undergrad in Bangladesh, then I did my MBA, then I worked in Bangladesh for over 8.5 years in different roles. And just recently I have moved to Canada. And now I'm mostly back to academic with some little industry attachments. So I am putting this to talk about the contextual adaptation, because adaptation is needed for everyone, or the adaptive intelligence, everyone needs it, not only machines, also humans. For example, when we are changing our context, when we are moving from one country to another, we need to adapt ourselves. So I can share something based on my experience when I was working in Bangladesh. So as we know, Bangladesh is mostly a tech-forward country. That is quite natural. It is a relatively young country. We are just completing our 50 years, and we have a growing economy. We are a developing country. Actually, we were an underdeveloped country 20 years back. Now we are developing, and hopefully we will soon be a developed country. So we follow technology. And in Bangladesh, mostly the consumer market, which you call B2C, business to consumer, is more dominant. For example, I used to work in telecom sector. So in telecom, most of our revenue came from the consumers, like the mobile SIMs or the calls or internet service you use. So that is more revenue, is consumer focused. There are other revenue streams like the government or the business B2B, but it's mostly consumer focused. And because of that, the ARPU means average revenue per user, that is relatively low. Because when you are getting all your revenue from consumers, and in a country like Bangladesh where the average income is not that high, you cannot charge high. So in Bangladesh, the call rates, if I can go back to the telecom example, the call rates or the device prices are relatively low. It's relatively compared to other countries. Obviously, I mean, I should not say that everything is cheap in Bangladesh, but it's relatively low. So that is why, because of all these things in Bangladesh ICT sector, we have been mostly dependent on imported solution. So by import, I means that we are mostly following the other examples, like when we are selling any hardware, we are trying to import it. Sometimes we develop it as well. For the software, yeah, there has been a very emerging software sector in Bangladesh. There is software development, but maybe that's not in the scale as North America, of course. So we have been mostly putting solution with local customization, because that was our market is actually need. We are tech forward country. We have mostly consumer people, market, and which is low RPU. So maybe we cannot afford to do R&D in all aspects. And as a result, in BDICT sector, as my experience says, the generalist skills are more demanding. So by generalist skill, I mean that not very focused technical skill. So if you see on the pictures on the right that I have put the box plot, so you see the yellow one, operation is very demanding. That means in BDICT sector, most of the jobs are more or less operational. So we actually used to operate things or run things. Okay. And then comes some managerial jobs as well, where we used to manage. But I should say in BD context, managerial operation are mostly synonymous, because when we do the operation, we actually manage people or other our partners. And when we are doing managerial jobs, we are managing our own teams or organization. And R&D is of course there. There are very organized organizations that are doing a lot of R&D. There have been so many good companies emerging by university graduates as well. So R&D is there, but still it's not the dominant one. So that's the BD context. We are mostly doing operational jobs, some managerial and some R&D. As a result, the general skills are more demanding. Now, what is happening in North America? So obviously, I need not need to tell that it is a tech leader, USA or to some extent Canada. They are leading the world in terms of technology. Economies are advanced, and both the markets, B2C or business, both are strong. So obviously, the average revenue per user is higher. And that is why here they can afford to develop own solution. Because when you are developing your own solution, you have to invest for it, and you have to make sure that investment gets returned. So if you have the market, then you can actually afford for that. And naturally, when you have the R&D dominant, the specialized skills are more demanding. So that is actually a nice transition. When we are working in BD, maybe general skills can help us to survive, but when we are coming here, we need to develop specialized skills. Generalized skills may not help us to achieve our dreams here. Yeah, we can always of course survive. There are a lot of jobs where generalized skills can help us, but we need to have good technical skills on a particular domain. And similarly, if we see the box plot, obviously operational jobs are dominant everywhere because people have to run operation. But here in North America, R&D jobs are very highly available. So that's very promising for all of you who would like to move here for study or work. And of course, I should say that the managerial jobs those exist, but here the managerial concept is not that highly focused because the managers are more about managing people or just coordinating. So I have to say R&D jobs are higher here relative to Bangladesh context. So that is a nice transition from BD and North America. There, the context is different, and accordingly we have to adapt our skills. So I think many of you know this context because we all know about our seniors. We read or we follow the news. But since I personally went through this journey, I can now feel it more. So I just thought to share this with you. And finally, it's now 11. We have maybe 10 minutes left. So let me finish quickly so that I can address the questions. And so how do we adapt? It's like following the same flow, like the way the machines adapt themselves, adaptive intelligence. So this is the same, almost the same curve as I was showing for my ECG biometrics system. We have to learn the patterns. Wherever we are in South Asia or in North America or in Europe, Australia, we have to learn the patterns of that particular ecosystem. There we have to identify the potentials. Where can we contribute? Where can we utilize our knowledge and skills? So it's not like that we have to change ourselves overnight. Just like that facial recognition machine or my ECG biometrics. So the core mechanism can be same. We have to identify what is our potential which is matching here. We have to match our strength, and then we have to update our skills accordingly. So that's the very simple flow. But sometimes it sounds hard when we are making transition from industry to academia or from one country to the other country. But we can just follow the same flow. We have to keep our intelligence adaptive. So adaptive intelligence is important for both machines as well as human. And so, of course, sometimes we can learn from machines. Because I feel that machines have one good advantage. Machines can erase their memory anytime. So if I just give a reboot, I give a delete, the machine loses its memory, I can then fit in new content there. But we, the human beings, we cannot forget everything at this point of time, and we can start learning new things. We need to keep learning continuously. So that is our limitation. At the same time, that helps us to be more advanced. We can use our past experience, potentials, skills to deal with the new scenario and move ahead further. Okay, so that was about more or less about my talk, and thanks so much. I'm not sure how much I could actually help you to enlighten, but based on my little knowledge and experience, I tried to share a little bit. Now, let me address the questions, and of course, if you have any more questions, please keep asking. So I have first.
Thank
Yes,
you very much,
Sajid.
Adib. I guess if the audience members are comfortable, I would invite them to unmute and ask the questions. So there are some questions in the chat box. So first was asked by Mr. Iftekhar. So I can see that he's still among us. So if you could unmute yourself and introduce and then go ahead and ask your question.
Hello, assalamu alaikum. So I had a question actually. So the question is basically what will happen when a person is having a problematic heart? So the heart rate and heartbeat then should not be the same. So how will that device actually measure the beats then?
Yeah, thanks, Iftekhar. That's actually a great question because ECG basically it was invented to detect heart abnormalities. That was the basic purpose, and now we are thinking it as a password. So it is very common that we get abnormal heart signals when we are dealing with ECG, and that's one of the very highly variable factors. So as I was saying, these can be initially challenging because the heart rate, the waveform changes, and we have to just follow the same pattern. So if I go back to my the flow, this one. So what happens is usually when we are recording the ECG, we record it for a certain amount of time, maybe for 30 minutes. And in a 30-minute sample, even if the heart is abnormal, we do get some normal samples. We get the normal beats and we get some abnormal beats. And for each abnormal cardiac pattern, there is different type of abnormal beats. For example, there are some cardiac diseases. Each of these has different beat pattern. So again, our priority is getting the normal part. So even if we get the abnormal patterns, for example, we are getting a signal like this, we should try to find out the normal part. So maybe in 30 minutes, that person had 25 minutes of abnormal beat, but 5 minutes of normal beat. We need to find out the normal beat, and then we need to check it with the template that is it matching or not. If it matches, then that's fine enough. We identify the person. Also, we mark that this person is getting abnormal beat. So moving on, if this person returns, we will check the abnormal pattern as well. And that's where we adapt the learning. So from the next instance, when this person again returns, we have both his normal and abnormal patterns. So that is actually how we try to deal with this issue. So hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question is from Mr. Najur Rahman. He's also in the audience. So if you could ask the question.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
From here, I am concerned about the ECG-based password. This is kindly very new thing to me. So I am asking about the thing that if I go for a website or something, I have mentioned about voter registration part. The thing is that for the registration part, you don't have to spend much time for registration part. I mean, taking the data that can identify you. So I am finding here that for the ECG based pass, there are so many adaptive things that machine have to understand that what about the data. So how can it? I mean, about the timing things. You know that for the voter registration things, you cannot give so much time for a person. So how can you? I mean, solve this kind of thing. That, what is your thinking about this matter? I mean,
Yeah,
both
thanks.
time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And that's a very good question again. So yeah, this is still a limitation of this ECG biometrics, and that is one of the reasons that we're still seeing it not as that relevant, because we see finger biometrics everywhere. We see eye-based or we see voice-based, but ECG is still to take the sharp rise. So this is one challenge that researchers are trying to overcome. For example, how we can make the algorithm faster. So because first thing is that we have to make the algorithm faster to understand. At the same time, we cannot avoid the fact that we need to capture the ECG for at least sufficient point of time. Like when you're giving the fingerprint, as we are seeing, you can just push your finger for 5 seconds. But when you are capturing your ECG, we need to capture it for a minimum amount of time. That's one of the limitations. At the same time, limitations are there, but the people who are working with this day, we are also promoting its positive parts, like the security part, because limitation will be there for in case of timing, but that's for the enrollment once you enrolls. But when you returns afterwards, then it may not take that time. So maybe for the enrollment, we need to do some sacrifice if we really want to use this technology. So considering its positive parts, we can do that sacrifice for the timing, but afterwards it can be faster. And of course, if the algorithm becomes more faster, that's what we are working with. We can have some better outputs in the future.
Yeah, so I am thinking about one thing that that if every people have something like ECG based data, that every people wearing watch, that every people they have the ECG based data or something like that they generate from the watch. So it can be this data can be used that only within a second the data can be grabbed. So it can be identified for every people. So I am thinking about this thing. I am from actually computer science.
Okay, so you mean the security risk that if it gets captured, if it becomes vulnerable? Is that the question?
No, I am thinking about the solution that when we go for the mass thing that I'm going for the voter registration part and there is so much line and I cannot give so much time for a single person. So the thing is can be
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
So the thing is can be happen with the like that there is a watch and this can be a ECG password and there can be a data that which can be used for the voter registration part that this data comes from your and you take you wearing the watch and that data if you need 1 day or 2 day or some 1 month I can say. So the data comes from your ECG password and there is a data that can be used as a ECG based password. This data can be used for a identified. So if you take
Yeah.
this data from the people, so it don't need much time, just one time.
Yeah,
So
true. So
that time you need for the data to to take the data to identify you. It can be comes from your watch which you are in date. I'm thinking about the framework.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, for the framework, so far the ideal thinking is that the enrollment has to be done maybe once in a lifetime, or I should say that as you said, that it is not realistic that we put people in the queue for registration with the ECG biometrics. So that's not actually realistic. The realistic solution can be that we have a single separate event just to do this thing. For example, for a locality, we can have the biometric registration process. There we give people time that, okay, please come at that point of time. Please come with at least 5 minutes in hand. We will need 5 minutes to take the signal. And we take your signal, then you are free. And then we store the signal. That's the enrollment part. And then whenever we use this for any purpose, like that people is coming back to give his or her vote, or he is using it for other purpose, for any authentic, then we just do the verification. So we no longer need to do the enrollment, we just do the verification. But also, as I said, the verification is adaptive. So again, when they are coming back, their signal can change, and then again we have to update the template. That's something we will do, but still that will not take as much time as the enrollment. So during the enrollment, we need to invest sufficient time, making sure that we capture all the signal parts. But when in the other phases, when the verification happens, we just need to verify, and in case there is any change, we need to update the template. So that will be more faster. So this can be one sort of framework.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Last question is from Tajwar Al Mahmood. Sorry, Tajwar Al Mamoon. If you could unmute yourself and ask the question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. Sir, my question is, how should we approach our curriculum in EEE undergraduate program so that we can apply those knowledge in adaptive intelligence field in future?
Okay, so thanks for the question about curriculum. Actually, for example, I finished my undergrad in BUET almost 10 years back.
Yes, sir.
So maybe,
Sir, I am also currently an undergraduate student at BUET.
okay, that's good. So I was thinking to maybe take Sadi's suggestion, because at our time we didn't, for EEE we did not have any particular course regarding machine learning. So I am not sure if now it's updated, but I see a lot of research from EEE machine learning, and of course from CEC, also from biomedical. So I guess there has been some updates.
Like, sir, how can we integrate our EEE academic concepts like at communication parts in these projects?
Okay, so first thing is there are two things here. I was sharing a bit in the slides that one part is the implementation, the coding. Okay,
Yes, sir.
so coding is skill that you can learn maybe anytime. You need to know Python, and nowadays coding frameworks are also become user friendly. Just like, you know, like Arduino, Python has now a lot of templates or the basic frameworks. So it's not like that you have to learn the scratch from coding. But very important part is the algorithm, or I should say the analytical skills, because you have to work with the algorithm. Doing the coding may become easy at one point of time, but you need to know what does this interpret. Okay, so I should say that first you need to develop the basics, the very basic basics. Like, for example, I work with the signal processing part, so here the basics are very important. You need to understand how you can analyze the signals. So already I think that's addressed in the curriculum. Then you have to understand how you correlate that. One thing, when I was doing my undergrad in BUET, I really feel that we learned the theories, which we could see some practical applications. So for me, I will always suggest check the practical applications. So as I was saying, that you will see a lot of contests happening around the world. Like, you will see the ECG signal diagnosis challenge or skin disease diagnosis challenge. Just see what kind of problem they are posting. Then you try to read this with your learned theory. That, okay, can I try to solve it using my theory? If I can, let me make a code. So thus you can try to make a linkage. And of course, now there are so many opportunities. So of course, IEEE is there. And I think Sadit and the team is working on a lot of different aspects. Different departments are having a lot of other events or contests. So there is a scope of learning as far as I can understand.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. There is one last question from Imtiaz Ahmed. I think he just got disconnected. So let me read out the question. So the question is, maybe the signals produced by our biology is hard to hack today, but it is possible in the future that quantum computation and other powerful electronics devices, these might be able to be hacked. So is it possible to develop some kind of security system against such kind of hacking?
Yeah, so thanks, Mr. Imtiaz. Yeah, that's a good question. And frankly, I don't have the answer of that, because at this point of time in 2020, we are saying that biometric is the biological signals are more secure. We can't hack ECG, but we don't know that can happen. As you said, that things are moving ahead, and as you will know, Harry said that we are becoming hackable animals. Our brains will become hackable. Our hearts can also become hackable. So that can happen. And yes, security is a running concern. In fact, in my work, I also work a little bit about the security. So I could talk more on that. I mean, in fact, it's possible to talk a lot on that about security, that how we are dealing with the security issues. We have user security protocols also. We have some improved security system. For example, I can say that the typical DDoS or other attacks, those are even those can even happen for ECG biometrics. So we need to keep the system protected against those, and that is also a big area of research. So yeah, thanks for that question. And Sajid, I guess we missed one question from the start. It was from Mr. Mohiuddin Hafiz. Actually, he's my respected senior. He also lives in here in Montreal.
Oh, my apologies. So,
No
Mr.
problem.
Mohsin, if you could go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, Azfar, I think he could address most of the things that I was. Okay, it's just simple, like biometric, like a fingerprint is unique to everyone, right? And since your ECG signal varies, like, is it possible that at any instant, like, the ECG password generated for one could be similar to some other person?
Yeah, thanks Bhaiya, for a very good question. So theoretically, yes, theoretically the signal can be same for two people, but practically it is very rare. I mean, from my experience, I have not seen or same for others, because if we just go to the signal processing basics, that a signal and it's always random. It's just random signal, and the random signals hardly become similar end to end. When you're taking, for example, when we capture ECG for 5 minutes, we are getting 300 seconds signal, and we are getting at least 1200 bit points. So practically, it is very rare to find two people similar. Theoretically, it can be, but practically, we are not seeing. It's just like the way finger-based biometrics. Like theoretically, we can think that fingerprints for two people can be similar, but so far in the world, we are not finding any two fingerprints similar, because that's how our biological patterns vary. So given that
Okay.
biological pattern, that is not similar.
So you are not adopting any correlation, right? As for example, say, yeah, it's not 100% similar, but say the correlation of the two samples having something like 0.7 or 0.8 is very closer to like the highest correlation. So in that case, is there any chance that, okay, those two are misinterpreted?
Yes, Bhair, that's a nice point. We actually use correlation in our identification phase. So if I was just go to this slide, like I was showing the ACR. So in identification, for template matching, we use ACR, which is the autocorrelation coefficient. So the basic purpose is, for example, in my template, I have ECG samples of 100 people, and then maybe Mr. X comes and he tries to authenticate. Then I checks his ECG with 100 samples doing the correlation, and the ones which matches most I consider is as Mr. X. So that's the number one match. So we actually do ranking based matching, like number one match, number two match, number three match. Like maybe Mr. X, his own one matches 95%, but maybe Mr. Y, that matches 85% with Mr. X. So that gets recorded that there is some close matching. So it is possible to record that, and how we deal with that, it actually depends on the algorithm and maybe also on the law. There are some legal aspects here, that what happens when we have close passwords. For example, for biometrics, I'm not sure what is the legal law in Bangladesh. Like what happens if they get two similar biometrics, but I guess we have to consider the best matching one. So still we are considering the best matching one here, or the most autocorrelated one. But it is possible to determine that which are the other match close ones. So we do have a record of that.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think Mr. Iftekhar wanted to ask another question, so you can go ahead and ask.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Actually, I have done my B.Sc last year and in Tripoli. And I took biomedical as an elective, and I feel really interested in the subject. And while we are in lab and that electrodes and everything measuring the ECG, so it was all new to me, and I was so excited. But as end of it, and while I was planning for my post graduation. But everyone is seems like bit not very supportive in this sector. If I can say, like in Bangladesh perspectives, like about the job fields and all that. So how, as an experienced person, sir, how will you describe it, and how you see it as like in Bangladesh perspective in this field? How you can actually explain it?
Yes, so thanks, Iftikhar, and I really can feel you because it reminds me of my own experience as well. If I just tell a little bit, we are already, I think it's now 10% in Dhaka, but I just continue for a little while. So I also had ECG-based thesis in my undergrad research. So in undergrad, it's not any, I should not say that it's very significant. And I had Dr. Ainal Haq as my supervisor, who is now the head of BUET Biomedical. So at that time, it was more than 10 years back, in 2009. So I had that one as my thesis research. And somehow, by the course of time, after almost a decade, after 10 years, I again returned to this arena. Although in the meet, I worked in different other aspects, as I was saying. But after a decade, I returned here. And also, it gave me a good feeling because now I could really understand that how much things have evolved. When I did my undergrad, there exists nothing called ECG-based biometrics, but now it's a big area of research. So it's always good to see the evolution. So that was really fascinating for me. That's my story. And now, if I answer your part, yeah. So in Bangladesh, again, as I was telling in my slides, that our ICT sector, in overall, we are technology followers. We mostly follow, and we try to actually focus those products which have market value. Since I work in
Yeah.
Bangladesh industry, I had the opportunity to work with universities as well. Maybe some of the people know that I used to take care of the industry academic collaboration. So my job was to find good products from the academia to sell for my company. And obviously, when I used to choose products, I had to choose those which had market potential because I could not show my CEO to any product that cannot be sellable. Okay, maybe the product is really highly potential. So that happens in the growing economy. When people are not more emphasizing quality things, they are more focusing on the quantity or the ultimate revenue. So I feel your scenario, and maybe I think things are better than what it was 10 years back or 5 years back in terms of biomedical research. Like I'm mentioning here BUET again and again since that's our alma mater, but in BUET we now have separate department, and as much as I follow, they are doing a lot of good jobs. We have some respected seniors there. We are doing a lot of good achievements. And the COVID actually can act as a catalyst because here in North America, we are seeing some surge in biomedical research funding because of COVID. Like here in Canada, Canadian government announced a big amount of funding to do COVID research. So maybe I shared that we in our university are working with particular projects. So there is a lot of government funding. In Bangladesh, again, maybe the funding or the financial part is tricky. I'm not sure how much more support you can get, but I think people should be at least more enthusiastic than before. So in Bangladesh, the limitation remains. But if I say about other parts of the world, you can have a lot of scopes to work, be it in North America or Europe or in anywhere, even within Asia, in Japan or China and whatever. There are so many things going on. Like only for this smart ECG biometrics, I can find my peer researchers in so many places of the world. So scopes are there outside Bangladesh. And in Bangladesh, I should say maybe you have to be a little bit patient. You need to find the right opportunity. But things are getting better, so we can hope for the best. Oh, and by the way, I can share my email here because if any of you,
Actually, I'm planning to like.
yeah, please carry on.
Yeah, that will be really helpful.
Yeah, so if any of you would like to contact me, most welcome about anything, and please, I would be love to remain in touch. Email also, I am active in Facebook Messenger. You can log me there.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And I would like to invite everyone to please turn on your webcams. We would like to take a group photo with the speaker. And while you're doing that, I'd like to quickly share my screen. So this is a virtual certificate that we typically award all of our Meet the Young Professional guest speakers. So Mr. Azfar Adib is not only an outstanding volunteer for the IEEE Bangladesh section, he always volunteers and gives talks, attends our sessions. And today we were really glad to have him as a speaker in our session. So for giving his talk on adaptive intelligence, machines versus human. So this is presented virtually, and after the session is over, I'll email it to him.
Thank you so much, Sajid. It's a privilege. Thanks.
Thank you. And also, if you want the recording of the session, we would first upload it privately in your YouTube channel and show it to Azfar before sharing it publicly to all the participants. So I guess now, if you're all comfortable, we can go ahead and take the picture. So please don't be shy. Turn on the webcams.
Can you see mine?
Yes,
Yeah,
you
you
may.
can. Adib, also I see Professor Dr. Shamima. I guess it's from your mom. Assalamu alaikum, madam. I think you were আপনি আমার বোনের টিচার ছিলেন, আমার বোন ঢাকা মেডিকেল কলেজের K54 ব্যাচের। So thank you so much আসবার জন্য। Let's go ahead and get the picture taken. Okay, thank you so much, Shobaike. And with this, I would like to conclude the session. So if you, I don't see any last minute questions in the chat box. So please feel free to keep coming to our Meet the YP webinar series. And thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all.